Imagine and happy Sunday. As you can tell, new backdrop. You know, it's a new year, so I wanted to change things up a bit as we are in the last Sunday of this month. Can you believe it? 2021, here we are. We got a new month just right around the corner. And to some of us, 2021 might feel a lot like 2020, and that could bring discouragement and just feelings of hopelessness and being overwhelmed because it just feels the same. And it might even feel hard and scary to actually dare for a new year. And then for some of us, 2021 is new, it's fresh, it's exciting. Wherever you're at, I've mentioned this before, we are with you in both spaces, in the hard and trying moments and also in the beautiful moments of celebration and joy. And that's what's so powerful about being in community, is that you don't have to experience the space that you find yourself alone, which is why it was so good to hear from Larry last week. So Larry, thank you so much for sharing your heart. I love how Larry shared just all of the exciting things that were happening next month and in this new season. But being able to hear Larry's heart, the heartbeat behind all the new things that are emerging within our community, that was what was so powerful. And so if you didn't get a chance to log on last week, we have an exciting new book club that we're going to be beginning with Dr. Jade Higa, who is part of our community. She's going to be leading a book club diving into Brene Brown, one of my absolute favorites, huge influential voice in my life. Brene Brown's Daring Greatly book, and that's going to begin actually next week in February, the first week of February. And so if you are excited about joining this book club, there's limited spots, go ahead and get in touch with us. And we also have the continuations of living rooms. We want to encourage you to be a part of that. Again, living rooms is a space where we connect with each other, where we are able to just dive deeper into what we process through Sunday, just kind of sharing our lives with each other throughout the week. And yes, it's all virtual, which sometimes can be hard and it can be difficult and awkward and challenging. But I pray, imagine, that you would dare to believe that God wants you to experience something fresh and new in those spaces. So we have the continuation of living rooms, and then we have exciting drive-in experiences, which you'll hear about in the next couple of weeks. So if you are also interested in helping us with our drive-in experiences, please contact our church as well. You can contact us by emailing us at imaginehi.org. Again, that's imaginehi.org. Or you can direct message us on our Instagram at imaginehi. Again, that's imaginehi. And so, again, imagine, I am just always inspired by seeing you folks show up. For you to show up, for you to log on, takes just as much courage as it is to show up when we were meeting in our public spaces. And I truly believe, church, that God is doing something new and that God is doing something fresh. And I pray that we would all courageously surrender and that we would be sensitive to what the Spirit of God is doing and that we would partner alongside Him in this new season that is here.
Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you. It is well. It is well. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds still know His name. So let it go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds
So my word for 2021 is not a word, it's a saying. Just do it by Nike. The reason why I selected this word is because sometimes we get stuck in the same rut, we always find ourselves in the same place, and it becomes cyclical and you get tired of it. And you go to everyone else for your problems, and you try to get that validation for things to change, and you realize they don't change. And at the end of the day, the only person that can change is yourself. You're your own cheerleader. So I think sometimes you have to get that drive, that fire, and just do it. Get up, go to that social event that you're not too excited to go on. Go out with those people that you might not necessarily be on the same page with. Get up earlier, read a book. I think at the end of the day, we have the power to change it if we really dig deep and drive. So just do it.
My word for 2021 is spontaneity. And even as I am recording this, I am not being very spontaneous since I'm planning it out for this year, but that's why I'm choosing this word, and I'm hoping to bring more joy into my life by not always knowing what's to come, and being excited over those moments and living in the present.
My word for the year, even though it's the end of January, but my word, when we were told to meditate during that instrumental part during the beginning of the year, prior to that, the Psalm 37 kept coming up, and I just didn't understand really why. It just kept popping up in my head. I mean, obviously, it's the Spirit of God leading me there. So in that time, I turned to Psalm 37 and read through it, and basically, it's the psalm about trust, right? And just delighting yourself in the Lord and Him giving the desires of your heart to His people. And I believe that in the end, my revelation is that my delight in Him becomes my desire. So the desire, what I most desire in the end, when you realize your delight in God is God. So most people will look at this verse and say, delight yourself in the Lord and He'll give you the desires of your heart, whether that be a job, money, a family, a child, or marriage, or a partner. But in actuality, when you delight yourself in the Lord, the desire of your heart becomes God Himself and His people. And so I believe that my word for this year is actually trust. And I didn't want to have that word. I felt like it was so basic and boring. But as I read through that psalm, with the knowing that this verse kept popping up in my head, and that being the word, it just kind of solidified it and sealed it for the year. And so that is my word for this year: to trust, to believe, to cling to the promise of God being with me, no matter what we face, no matter what it looks like, no matter what I think my life should look like, that in the end I am in Christ and He is with me, no matter what.
I searched the world, it couldn't fill me. Hands hands empty praise, and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and hold me back together. Now every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, now I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you.
See, Larry, did you catch that? Larry was doing this last week when he started to make fun of me. Alright, I didn't like that. I just did it again. Oh my gosh, I literally forgot what I was going to say in the intro. I'm keeping this because Larry and Levi's benediction was so good last week with the outtakes. I'm keeping that. I froze for a sec. It's all good. We're 30 seconds in. We're just getting started. But today, I want to talk about how we think about and how we relate to God. Right? It's a small teaching. There's this subtle thing I want to show you, but it's a subtle thing that when it clicks and affects our life actually makes this big difference. So I'm going to begin where these ancient sages in the Bible began when they talked about wisdom. So Proverbs 1:7 says, very well-known verse, the Proverbs writer says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Or some people might say the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, fear is actually this Hebrew word yirat. So if you're at home by yourself right now, say it with me. Say yirat. And yirat is about being absolutely in awe of something. Like, it's not quite terror, but it's also more than respect. Right? It's not really about being scared of something. It's about awe and about reverence and about power and about holiness and this awareness of this humble place we have and how fragile we are in this large and amazing universe. It's this, Yerad is this great sense of respect, and yet it's still more than that. It's this reverence that comes over you because in that moment you are keenly aware of just how small and fragile and powerless you are, and yet how safe you are in this universe. This is why the sages and the mystics and the great people who love God tremble in the presence of God. So fear is a lot more what we mean by awe and respect, which is why the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said that the awe of God is the beginning of wisdom, which is probably his way of translating that more for us. You know, one of the things when I have friends visit out here, one of the things I will do is take them with me to the North Shore to go swimming with sharks. And I love seeing the experience of them building up, because this is free diving. That means there's no cage. It's off of Haleiwa Boat Harbor, however far we go out. And when we go out, it's a professional thing, so it's, you know, chartered. Some friends of ours who run it. And, you know, you see the anticipation and there's excitement and fear, right? There's this, we're going to have an amazing experience, and a part of me is terrified. At the same time, it's, I know I'm entering into something bigger and beyond my own control and management system. And I've done it enough where I'll still get nervous, but I'm a little more comfortable, but I can see the fear and the anxiety and the excitement building. It's this, then you get in the water and there's 15, 20 sharks around you, 8 feet, 10 feet, 11 feet, right? I've seen a school of hammerhead sharks when I've been there before, right? It's this great, powerful, this is bigger than me, and yet it's also beautiful and okay. You know, you climb the stairway to heaven hike out here, and if you ever get to the top and it's clear, I've done it 3 times and it's always clouds. One time I saw it clear at the top of Stairway to Heaven, and it was one of the greatest views I've seen on the entire planet. Not just Hawaii, but the planet, when I saw that view of how you see Oahu from that angle. And even those moments, it's this great sense of awe and respect and reverence and beauty, and we're small and this is big, and yet it's this grounding, humanizing, beautiful thing. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The awe of God is the beginning of wisdom. Which is, I would say this as we transition into make these distinctions. The fear of the Lord is where the majesty of God meets our intimacy with God. Where the majesty and power of God meets our intimacy and our immediacy of connection with love with God. So I want to stay with these words for a second. The majesty of God and the intimacy with God. So majesty is bigger beyond, massive bigger than us, powerful, awe, holiness, in need of reverence. And intimacy is in us and with us and for us. And it's not just power, it's tenderness, right? Cornel West says justice is what love looks like in public, and he says tenderness is what love looks like in private. It's a God who creates the world but is still tender. So for me, and what I think the scriptures point us to is to be followers of Jesus, to be people of faith in this world, we have to hold together in our very life the majesty of God and our intimacy with God. Because when you only have one and not the other, it creates a lot of problems. Here's what I mean by that. When you have, stay with me, because you will find yourself in different places here. When you have the majesty of God without the intimacy of God, then you will end up with a tyrant, right? It's like the angry, drunk dad in the sky that we walk on eggshells around trying not to piss off, right? Do we believe in him? Sure. Do we know he's powerful? Yes, but do we trust him? Do we feel loved by him? Do we feel safe in him? Do we think he's tender? No, when you have the majesty without the intimacy of God, there's no tenderness, and it creates a tyrant, right? If you ever feel like you're being punished, condemned, or fearful of God, that is a tyrant that does not reflect the God we see in scriptures, right? It's this powerful being that demands respect, but we want to stay away from. It's this powerful force that we want to keep distance from. There's always this sense of fear of we don't know where we stand with this God. Think about your experience with God. Are there ever moments where you're uncertain, anxious, and fearful of where you stand? There's a fear of punishment. There's a fear of what is God going to do to me, right? It's easy to fall into that. And you know where this view of God is most commonly seen? In really scary Christians. You ever been around scary Christians who have this respect for the power of God but don't seem to know the tenderness? It's really scary, some of their views of God. It's a monster and a tyrant. It's not someone you feel safe with. Here's an example. A guy finishes preaching this sermon. It's a story about a friend of mine. I won't say who, because it's just fun to do that sometimes. Maybe you guys know him, maybe you don't. I don't know. Up to you to decide. Friend of mine is at a church and he hears the guy preaching, right? This guy, from my perspective, the little bit I know, kind of has a version of God that reflects some of that majesty without the intimacy of God, right? A little bit of a tyrant, a little bit of a controlling dictator-like God, right? And after this guy preaches the sermon, my friend walks up to him and just to affirm him, show him some love, was like, hey man, just want to let you know that was really good. You did a great job, or whatever. And the guy's just like, great job? No, people should be on their face right now. When you're done preaching, everyone should be on their face in reverence of how holy and how good and how powerful God is. To me, which I respond, somebody get that man a puppy or something to soften him up. My friend's just affirming your teaching, which, let's be honest, maybe wasn't even that good in the first place. But this sense of the proper response to this is you should be on your face right now in front of God. You should be freaking on your face at how unholy and bad you are in front of this powerful God. You're like, that doesn't sound very appealing to me. But when you have the majesty and power of God without the intimacy and tenderness of God, you end up with a tyrant. And the awe of God does not require us to worship a tyrant. Right? But there's the other side of that. What happens when you have the intimacy or tenderness of God without any sense of majesty or reverence? Right? This is where, most often when you see some version of like the intimacy of God without the reverence or without the majesty of God, is in some sort of, everyday popular culture, new age version of spirituality, basically. And again, I'm not knocking it as a whole. I'm just saying both of these things are limited, right? So you have a person who's like, I go to yoga, I read Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now. I never actually finished it, but I always have it with me. I watch Oprah Super Soul Sunday. I drink kombucha. I charge my crystals at nighttime, and I shop at Whole Foods all the time, right? And I try to eat vegan, but when I get drunk, I eat cheeseburgers. Like this whole kind of way of being. You know the people. Some of you are like, hey, I like kombucha. I do yoga. I shop at Whole Foods. You know, I've read Eckhart Tolle. That's great. I like I don't drink it much because it's too expensive, but I like kombucha. I shop at Whole Foods. There's no knock on any one of those individual things. But when you have this vague idea that God is love or the universe is on my side and I'm just going to do whatever makes me happy, right? That's a common approach. But what happens when you have the intimacy or the tenderness of God, like the universe is on your side, without the reverence of God, is you end up not with a tyrant, but you end up with a pet that you can place in your little bag, control, and use however and whenever you want. But a pet that's ultimately powerless and is not worthy of our worship and our reverence and our awe and our devotion. Right? When you have the intimacy without the majesty, you don't have to, there's nothing there's no surrender. There's no entrusting. There's no laying your life down before something bigger, because that's not even powerful enough to lay your life down to. And also this view of God, it allows, this is the sneaky thing why I know people are so drawn to it. It allows your ego to remain at the center while you still can convince yourself you're very spiritual and very evolved. That's why I see a lot of people who have profound things to say, but their ego's still at the center, and they're not really transformed, liberated, free people. They just have a lot of good quotes and probably have a lot of Lululemon clothes to go along with it. Again, not knocking Lululemon at all. A person can feel, with this view, you can feel very spiritual and still be completely egocentric and self-centered. The ego can hide at the center when you don't have the awe and reverence and majesty. That's what we surrender our place at the center to. That's what we entrust our life to. I remember in one of our old churches in Orange County, it was, a living room type of environment. And there was this young woman, she's probably 30-ish at the time. And, she definitely came from a life of partying pretty hard and whatever. We all would share our lives together. And I want to say she was part of it for maybe like a year. And I remember talking to her once, and she was expressing this frustration and angst and, disappointment and even anger towards God and life. And what she really communicated was, for the last year, I went to church, I tried to be good, I came to this space you're in, and I'm still not married. Like, God still didn't give me a husband. And again, I have compassion when people are, desiring companionship and don't have it. That's not easy. But what she put on display was her view of God was one that she was trying to manipulate, that she was trying to get to do whatever she wanted. It wasn't she wasn't letting go of her will and surrendering to God. She was maintaining her will and trying to get God to surrender to hers. Because she had this intimacy, tenderness, God is for me, without any reverence and awe for the power and majesty of God. She was in charge, trying to control God, instead of decentering her own ego and surrendering and learning to trust the God who is powerful enough to handle that. This is what the scriptures show us about, is a God who both is majestic and powerful and intimate and tender. We need to experience a God that is both of those things, one that's beyond us, but also within us. One that's more powerful than us, but always tender to us. A God that is powerful enough to surrender control to and present enough to be comforted by. Right? The very source of power that sits across the table breaking bread and drinking wine with us, like we see in Jesus, is also the creator and sustainer of the universe. It's a God who's the Lord of the universe, but still in love with us. It's both of those things. And the scriptures give us this amazing view of God that holds that tension of both of those views, showing us that's the relationality with God that's actually going to liberate us and ground us in this world. I want to finish with this text from Exodus 3:5. Speaking to Moses, God says, "Do not come any closer," God said, right? The famous burning bush story. It says, "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." I love that. By the way, Moses stood in front of a burning bush, heard the voice of God, took his shoes off because he was standing on holy ground. And I would encourage all of you to keep your eyes open for burning bushes that are all around us all the time. The tree that you sit under, that's the burning bush where God's reminding you, take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. The hike you go on when you finally stop and your heart seems to expand, that's your burning bush where God's saying, take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. When you stand at the edge of spitting caves or anywhere overlooking the water and you feel like you have clarity and presence like you never have, that's the 21st century burning bush where God is speaking to you saying, take your slippers off, you are standing on holy ground. But back to the story. The story of Moses is a warning against only having the intimacy with God without the notion that God is also powerful. God is not just your best friend and little buddy. He's the creator and sustainer of the universe who defends and protects you and is powerful enough to do that. Yahweh in this story seems to dwell in this dangerous holiness that cannot be transgressed casually, but one that is still always for us. Moses removes his sandals because he's on holy ground. But what's amazing is in the ancient world, you would remove your sandals whenever you stepped inside someone's home. So what I love about the story is that it's power and invitation. It's the holiness of God and the hospitality of God. Which is why I would say this. It's about worshiping God and being welcomed by God. It's both of those things. We worship God because of how powerful, creative he is, but we also experience this tender, we're welcomed by God and we're safe here and we're seen as well. So for somebody, there's different people here. Some of you struggle more with the intimacy of God and some of you struggle more with the majesty of God. So I just want to say a few direct things to finish, right? By the way, are you with me so far? Do you see how we can go from one end to the other, and the scriptures are inviting us to make that all one thing, right? So if you struggle, if you get the power and you I believe in that God, but you struggle trusting the intimacy of God, would you know God is not a distant and angry father in the sky who is waiting to punish you? That is not the God who is revealed in Jesus. What we see in the Bible is a God who comes near and desires to be with you. This is the God who Jesus refers to as Father. And he shows us that God as Father is not usually like the fathers that we know. You could actually say in the incarnation, Jesus is God saying to the world, I want to be with you. I want to be near you. I want to feel what you feel, go through what you go through, know what you know, and walk with you through that. Jesus is God saying, not just that God so loves the world, but Jesus is God's way of saying, I like you, and I want to be near you, and I want to journey with you as well. This is a Father that is more powerful than you, but has an open heart that's always present with you. Some of you today can hear this as an invitation to trust the tenderness of the heart of God a little bit more. And also, for some of you, actually, let me finish there. There's places within you that are so desperately in need of a tenderness and a love. So would this vision of God allow you, even as we sing this next song, would you close your eyes? Would you let your guards down? Would you lower your defenses? And would you invite and welcome the tender God into those spaces? Would you let your heart be unguarded, undefended? Would you trust that the powerful God is also the intimate God who's with you? But then there's others of you who might get the universe is on my side and God is my friend, but maybe struggle with the majesty of God and what that means, right? And how that looks like controlling, it looks like domination, it looks like manipulation, it looks like coercive power that so often ruins things in this world. Would you know the fear of the Lord is not about being scared or letting someone control or manipulate you? The majesty of God is a life-changing gift that you are not the center of the universe. You do not have to do this all alone. There is someone more stronger and more powerful and more capable than you that you can surrender, let go, and entrust your life to. That is a gift. Decentering yourself is one of the most liberating things you can do for your life. And we can only decenter ourselves when we are trusting there is a center that can hold it all together in God. Respect and reverence and awe are some of the most foundational experiences of what it means to be spiritual and what it means to be human. Majesty is about allowing God to be truly God and letting go of the need to fulfill that and control every single thing in our lives. So as we sing this next song, may you open your heart to the power and to the strength and to the presence of this awesome God. You need someone that's more powerful than you, that can protect you and keep you and ground you and keep you safe in a world that doesn't always feel like that.
He is jealous of me. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Thank you for your love. We thank you for your love.
I know that I'm losing some light here, and so I'll try to make this quick before I pray the benediction over our community. I just love how Kevin talked about just how powerful God is, but also how tender, just the tenderness of God, the depth of God's just kindness. And I pray, Imagine Church, that you would experience that in this next week. You know, I can't tell you more than enough just how proud I am of our church when I hear stories of people sharing, being welcomed by the kindness of you in the church, whether it's in their living rooms or whether it was when we were meeting in person, a text, a phone call. I just want to say that I am so proud of you, Imagine Church, for embodying that kindness and that tenderness of God to the people in our community. And I just pray, Imagine, that we would continue to embody the presence of God, that we would be His hands and His feet and His heartbeat wherever it is that we go in our community, in our neighborhood, our work, our family, wherever it is. And so Imagine, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn His face toward you and give you peace. And the community of Imagine says, amen. Huge shout out to Titus, who edited this week. Again, thank you to the worship crew, everyone who shared, and Kevin for that word. And we will be in touch, and we will see you again next time.